pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Being the nice guy is great until it bites you in the butt and leaves you wondering how you got caught in a trap of your own making. Today in the rLounge, saying no isn't mean, it's self-preservation. Would I be the a-hole if I changed my locks after agreeing to let my friend and her boyfriend move into my home? All names and places have been changed because anonymity is awesome. Also, I apologize in advance. This is apparently a lot of little things that are starting to stew into something bigger, and I'm trying to provide all the context in order for this steaming brew. Anywho, I, 34 female, bought my own home in Michigan a year ago, completely by myself. To this day, every bill, repair, payment, and furnishing has been paid for solely by me. This is important later and not a brag, I swear. It's a beautiful 100-year-old house that I'm hoping to restore one day. For context, I was phoned about 5 months ago in November by my friend's boyfriend, Alex, 36 male, because he'd lost his job. They were thinking of moving to the area I'd bought a house in and wanted to be roommates until they could get back onto their feet. At this time, they lived 2 states away from where I own a home, and since their rental lease was up come April, they were going to need somewhere in between to at least move their stuff to while they looked for a place. I agreed under the stipulations that since I travel for work that they, A, maintain the house's current state of cleanliness. I'm not a clean freak, but I expect a reasonably tidy home. No underwear on the floor in shared spaces, no rotting food on the counters or in the fridge, vacuum once a week, wash your dishes, clean the bathroom once a week, etc. B, we later all discussed and agreed that they together would pay half of the mortgage payment, which was less than half their existing rent, plus whatever gas electric they used while I wasn't home. I would pay sewer, water, garbage collection, my half of the mortgage, any repairs and maintenance, normal house stuff. I pay my mortgage at the end of the current month for the next month, so I'm never late on payments with banking errors and whatnot. C, no one would come over to the house when I wasn't there that I hadn't already met. I have multiple different past traumas regarding my home space being abused, robbed, and destroyed that I requested to have respected. D, the bulk of their stuff would be stored in the massive room downstairs in the bedroom I provided, second only to the master, besides obvious things like hygiene products in the bathroom and pans in the kitchen, etc. E, since they were moving from out of state and I am working out of state, open communication has to be kept about who was at the house and when, on both sides, so that if a bill has to be picked up, a service call has to be dealt with, or something is wrong, we know who's at the house so it can be dealt with. F, we'd partners collectively for someone to be at the house if any services had to be done. G, if something needs to be borrowed, it needs to be expressly discussed beforehand, not an afterthought or something I found out later. That's a huge breach of my trust. H, I have 3 people in my life that have expressed permission to be at my house for asylum. They agreed this list was 100% fair, they know all 3 people, and understood their situations were rocky, and they could need to get out of their homes at a moment's notice. However, as soon as I knew this could be possible, either myself or these individuals would let them know so they wouldn't be surprised. I would clean out my library from the room they were moving into, but would leave the guest bed and dresser so they had furniture to move stuff into. There was still plenty of space to put additional furniture. This was just to get them started. Further, whenever I'd reach out to my friend prior to this and his girlfriend, Anna, 37 female, about my arrangements, either she'd defer the conversation to Alex or he'd randomly start messaging me about the conversation. So all communication that wasn't in person between the 3 of us was between he and I. Further context. With the age of my house, I have 2 different keys for the side door to my house. Main door we use to go in and out. A key for the garage door, and no keys to the front door. After we agreed for them to move in, I had keys made for the house. Took a week's time off work to move things around to give them space and make them feel welcome. Cleaned the house top to bottom, began moving things out of the guest room, and more in preparation for their move in. Now back to our regularly scheduled crap show. We had this conversation of terms and agreed to them all in person in February of this year. By the beginning of March, I had no room to sit on my couch because it was overrun with stuffed animals. Alex had moved into the house completely and had been living there since the middle of February without informing me to start the job he'd gotten in the area. Great. I asked if this meant he was moving up when we'd agreed to rent starting, since he'd moved in early. He seemed gobsmacked. He asked, well, why would we do that? I said, because you moved in early. Literally every bill has gone up because you've been here. You'll have been here a full month and a half earlier than we agreed to. I'm doing you a favor, and because you haven't communicated with me, I'm supposed to eat the living costs of you being here? He then claimed he thought he'd talked to me about him moving in early. Spoiler alert, he hadn't even mentioned it, only that he'd gotten a job, but no start date, nothing. We addressed his lack of communication. He promised to do better. He'd pay his half, a quarter of the mortgage for the month of March. since he was there and he didn't communicate, and we'd all move on as this was fair. At this point, it wasn't about the money, but the principle. Our friend group had a very late friend's Christmas party due to all our schedules being completely conflicting. During this party, I hosted alone even though Alex and Anna were both in town for this party. So I did almost all the cooking. Some friends brought food to make or just to serve potluck style. I did all the cleaning. The only thing I asked was that Alex take the garbage out to the curb on Monday, our garbage day. This was on Saturday, as I had to leave town to return to work and wouldn't be back for at least 3 weeks. He agreed. I went back to work. All's fine and dandy. Until I get a Facebook message from the previous owners of my home informing me that the neighbors reached out to them in desperation because it had been almost a week and they couldn't get a hold of me or anyone at the house. My neighbor had hit the gas meter on my house and our gas was shut off. So I call Alex because if he turns any fire on in the house, it could blow. This is when I found out not only had he lost his new job, he also had moved back to Iowa in the meantime to continue packing and moving their stuff into my house without bothering to tell me. At this point, I'll admit I lost my cool. I'm at work 6+ hours away, desperately trying to make it home to my home that has had the gas shut off during nearly freezing temperatures, that the gas company cannot turn back on without having someone in the house to let them in. And this is when I find out he's not even in the state. He said, "Oh, I thought I told you. I must have forgotten. I'm sorry. I can head there now if you'd like." I said forget it, hung up on him and called a friend, Ken, who lives almost 2 hours away, for help. Ken got to the house, checked it all out. It's fine. Crisis averted. I found out also around this time that, oh, by the way, during the last set of storms that blew your way, you have a whole corner of the roof shingles that are completely ripped off your house. You might want to get those looked at. Awesome. Alex informs me the next day that he's coming back into town with a load of their stuff to drop off, so he can be there when the gas company arrives to turn everything back on. Ken agrees to be there for the roof repairs. That's great. I turn back around and go back to work. Gas meter gets fixed. Neighbor's super sorry. I get a service order with dates put in for the roof. Life moves on. I come home after the 3 weeks of being gone, to all the lights in the basement on, and my house smells rotten. Imagine musty, moldy chicken, soured honey ham, spoiled green beans, and other vegetables I cannot recall or recognize. Old gas station food wrappers that got caught in the mix and couldn't escape. Truly rancid stuff. So I asked Alex why the lights were on. He said he must have forgotten about them when he was there 2 weeks ago. I said that cannot happen unless you're paying the bill. He apologized. We move on. I then asked if he ever took the garbage out after the party like we talked about. His response? No, I haven't been there. I've been at the house about as much as you have been the last few weeks. I said, so the one thing I implicitly asked you to do, you couldn't be bothered. I lost my cool and hung up on him again. So I went to the fridge. Sure enough, this food I'd spent hundreds of dollars on, hours cooking, and weeks planning was rotting in the fridge because even though he'd said he'd been there to eat it and was looking forward to enjoying the leftovers, he'd left them in the fridge to rot. I checked the garbage can. Sure enough, it was full of rotten food. Additional garbage he'd added since he was back and forth and maggots. I saw red. I took all the food out of the fridge and threw it all away. I took the garbage out to the garbage can and added to the entirely full garbage can and brought it to the curb even though it was half a week too early, and spent the next 2 hours airing out and cleaning my house, dishes, and fridge. By the time I was done, the house was back to its clean state. I could breathe again, and the smell of rancid dead raccoon had finally faded. Let me tell you, that was the coldest cleaning day of my existence. 100% do not recommend. I addressed it with him, got a half-hearted apology at best, and we moved on. I found Christmas totes on sale, which I needed to put away in my Christmas decorations. I knew they were moving, so I asked Alex if he wanted any of them. He asked for 5. I said, okay, pay me back when you get the chance, and brought both his and mine home. Flash forward a couple weeks. All the totes are gone except for one I was already using. Every single one of the 11 that were empty were gone. So I asked Alex about them. He says, oh, I thought we talked about those. I took them back to Iowa with me while I filled them with our stuff to bring things back with. I said we talked about the 5 you had asked for that you haven't paid for yet, not all 11. I'd like mine back so I can put my Christmas decorations back. It's February. They shouldn't still be up. He said, oh, my bad. I'll buy new ones and move our stuff over as soon as I get back. I figured this was the end of it. Nope. He buys new totes, sends me a picture of the different colored totes, and says, here's your new totes. I'll bring them to the house next time I'm there. Excuse me? You say, what? So I said, oh, that's kind. However, you can just return my totes. No big deal. He starts trying to convince me to just leave them with the totes they took from me, since these are the same exact model totes, so they don't have to move their stuff out of the ones I'd bought. I repeated, I'd just like mine back, thank you. He finally relented, and I figured that was that. It's been a month and he still hasn't moved their stuff out of my totes so I can put my Christmas decorations away properly. The decorations are down and shoved in a closet, most likely getting damaged because I don't have them back. Whatever, at least they're down and I should get the totes back eventually. Hopefully, right? It's now the middle of April and the empty and full totes are both still there. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to March. Alex calls me and informs me that, hey, during one of his job interviews, they asked him if he'd be willing to relocate to Indiana for work. Anna and I discussed it, and there's nothing really holding us to Michigan. So we agreed we're going to start looking for and applying for jobs in Indiana. I have a friend who lives down there that I already talked to, who said he can live with them until we get a place, and we'll just leave our stuff in Michigan with you until we actually buy a place. This way we don't have to move stuff again and again until then. Alex hadn't even applied for this job yet, but they'd already worked out alternate accommodations. He'd set up the interview for there, and they had plans in place for it. Cool. Thanks for putting into considering all that I'd done for you and everything you'd given your word for, nothing that really held you here. But good for you, buddy. I took this to mean I didn't need to finish cleaning out the bedroom they were moving into, as they were no longer moving in. I even confirmed, "Where am I to house guests since you are not moving in?" As I normally did was the response. So I left the room alone and continued on with everything else I had to do. I find out a week later that Alex got the job, however he's worried he won't be able to keep it as the one he got fired from maybe caused him to lose the job he'd had for maybe 2 weeks. I asked him why that was. He said, "Oh, because I got fired from the first one for stealing from the company and getting caught." I panic. Say, "What the F now?" So during this conversation, Ken is at the house for the roof repair. I call him to ask him to go through my house. He says he'll go through the house, but the roof repair is done. Everything's good. I let Alex and Anna know. Everything's good. Yay! Until I get a call from Ken. He tells me the house doesn't look like anything's missing, but what happened to my house? I'm confused and anxious. What's wrong? He said there's stuff everywhere. I asked for clarification. He explains, "I said I'll take care of it once I'm home because I cannot handle it at that point, and it's only 1 week, but thanks for letting me know." Ken also asked me if there was any reason why the basement lights were left on when he got here. I said no and asked Alex. He'd forgotten to turn them off again when he was there earlier in the week, so he's been adding to the electric bill for almost a week. Again. To take this further, in the middle of March, I became extremely sick, was almost hospitalized, and we're still not exactly sure what's wrong. It wasn't COVID, but that's all we know for sure. So long story short, I didn't make it home for that week that I was supposed to. Anyway, I was supposed to help them move the rest of their stuff into my house during that time. I blame the curse of the people pleaser for offering in the first place. Obviously, I was too sick to do this and stay with my boyfriend during this time so he could take care of me. When I get back to my house after being really sick, I find their stuff everywhere. This is now officially 2 rooms in the entire house that do not have a single item of theirs. The couches are even more overrun with stuffed animals. The dining room now has a set of dressers. I have 5 totes and a chest as soon as you enter the basement. The room I gave them to put stuff into is almost completely packed. Alex's tools are in the workshop. Alex's rolling bar table, bikes, and bike mount are in my garage. Alex's hat is in my sewing room. The guest room they were going to use is full of their stuff. The only rooms not conquered by their stuff? My bedroom and the laundry room. At this point, I'm livid. We had set guidelines and discussions in place. Why is my house now overrun by their stuff when this is expressly not what we agreed on? When I texted to ask about it, because I now trust nothing verbally discussed, Alex hops in to inform me that they had issues with some of the items being too heavy, so they put them at the bottom of the stairs, and that will be the first stuff taken out as soon as they get to a place. I asked about the dresser in the dining room, was informed that's because the bedroom wasn't cleaned out like discussed. I said that's because you said you weren't moving in. Why would I clean out a bedroom you're not moving into? I asked about the stuffed animals. He said, oh yes, I didn't have space in the bedroom. I told him we discussed this before. I cannot sit on my couches. That's not what we agreed on. They need to be moved. The stuff in the garage? Oh, I wanted to mount them in the basement, but wanted to wait to talk to you first, so we agreed on where to put them, and the rolling bar was too heavy to get down your stairs. I asked why. You're not moving in, remember? Also, if you need to make adjustments, you should have asked or talked to me, not just put stuff everywhere. We discussed a set place, and none of these are in that place. It's been weeks, almost a month since the discussion. They haven't moved. It's to the point that when I come home, I go to my boyfriend's house instead of my own because mine is being overrun by roommates that are not even living there. Ken is literally begging me to change the locks on the house, give him a key, and he'll meet them whenever they need to go to the house so that I don't have to worry about my stuff being stolen. And I'm to the point of sincerely wondering if my kindness was a mistake. So fast forward to today. I found out the dates for the next time I'm to be home. I'd like to set up to have work done on the house, mostly my dishwasher fixed because it hasn't worked the whole time I've had the house, and I want to make sure it doesn't have other issues. Get my garage door pad fixed so that I can have others come over if no one's there to check on things. Get keys to my front door, which would result in all the locks for the entire house being changed, and maybe having cameras installed in the basement to be able to make sure I don't have flooding, invaders, or other issues since no one will now be living there regularly. To recap, it's now April. I haven't been paid a single penny, not for the totes, the bills, the rent, or at this point for storage. I'm paying for when Alex was living at the house and for them to store their stuff at my house. Alex is a thief and didn't bother to tell me until it was too late for me to refuse for them because they had keys to my house. They barely, if at all, notify me when they're coming and going in the house. My Christmas totes are still full of their stuff. My house is overrun by their stuff even though they're not even living there, but are living in Indiana and only visit maybe once a week to pick up mail. I receive no communication regarding their comings and goings in my house. I'm getting reports that the house is basically trashed right now, but haven't seen it to confirm. They're not upholding their agreements at all. I'm sure there's more that I've either forgotten or I'm just too exhausted from my newfound lifestyle as a writer on here to type out. Either way, the facts are that I'm starting to feel really used and would really just like to have my house back. So would I be the a-hole for changing the locks on my house after agreeing to let them live with me so they have to actually hold to their agreements, notifying me when they're coming and going at the house? I actually have locks that work for all my doors and I can have some peace of mind that control back over my own home. Let's see what the community thinks about all this. If I was you, I would have given them a date and tell them that if they don't come get their stuff, you'll have a company come and remove it and bring it to the dump. Don't let them argue or negotiate. They can rent a storage unit where they intend to move until they can find a place to live. No more being nice. Another person says, I know it's work and more money, but I would hire a truck and some movers or some friends and rent a storage unit for 1 month. Give the storage unit his name and phone number. Send him the info and tell him he has 30 days to empty it or pay the storage bill if they will auction it off. Change the locks and invest in some outdoor cameras along with the basement one in case they try to break in. The locks are a must because you can't trust a thief. I might also think really hard about filing a case in small claims court for the bill money he owes you, the lost food, and the storage unit. You set some simple rules. Don't steal, don't leave garbage rotting, don't act like a toddler, and somehow Alex and Anna have managed to ignore all of them. Honestly, it's not even about the totes or the money anymore. It's about the fact that basic respect and communication have just completely flown out the window. You tried being fair and giving them a chance, and they've turned into a mess. Update 1. I changed the locks. As many of you pointed out, I had indeed given Alex and Anna too many chances, and had now effectively taken up residence as a doormat. So while I was home from my work out of state, I scheduled some maintenance and added some new rules. They can only enter the house if Ken and or I are present, as we have the only keys. They need to get their mail forwarded to their new address or have it go to the post office for them to receive it, as I no longer want it coming somewhere they are not living. They have until the end of the month to get their stuff out of my house, or I will. I also have my totes back. The Christmas decorations are finally down and stored properly. Who knew that would be such a ridiculously eventful situation? Oh, and for the tea. Anna was 100% in the dark about what Alex was pulling. She had no idea he wasn't communicating with me as he'd been lying to her about it from the beginning and insisting on handling everything to make it easier on her. That has now been rectified after he received a wonderful, glorious butt-chewing when I surprised the two of them at my house to confront them about the BS they'd been pulling. My only regret about the conversation? That I hadn't made popcorn to enjoy the crap show. If there's more that needs to be added, I'll update again. Final update. First, thank you to everyone who pointed out that my chronic people pleaser was showing. I followed your advice and dusted off my spine and cracked a few of the kinks out of it while I was at it, glow stick style. Last I left off, I'd gotten the locks changed. Thank you again to everyone who stressed how important this was. I'm also installing cameras because it's stupid for me not to. Received my totes back and put away my Christmas decorations. I then found out Anna's silence was due to her complete lack of knowledge regarding the situation. Anywho, on to the update. I have my house back. They're 100% moved out. It seems that even after our conversation at the house that Alex still had much he'd kept Anna in the dark about. It seems their relationship might be a bit more precarious all of a sudden. However, that's not my story to tell. So after our brief conversation, I began working in the shadows. I compiled a detailed timeline with receipts of costs, broken agreements, breakdowns in communication, and where exactly he had begun to take advantage. I typed this up and sent it first to her with a brief message at the top stating that I don't know what she has been aware of or not, but here's the facts as I know them. Then again, I sent the same message to him with read receipts to prove they've seen them. I gave them until April 30th to remove all of their belongings. She apologized profusely and stated he had much to work on and that she would be more present in the lines of communication going forward, since that is clearly one of his opportunities. He also apologized, but in a sort of backhanded way that didn't really feel like an apology, and said he'd make it up to me as it was his responsibility. Lesson to anyone else eating crow. Maybe don't use the term "to your standards" in any capacity when apologizing. It doesn't feel sincere. We agreed on a date and time of pickup. They showed up with a moving truck while Ken, he really is a godsend of a friend, was working on some repairs for me and collected everything they had at the house. It's gloriously empty now. I thought I'd never empathize so much with the quiet now, but the shadows are welcoming. Oh, and it's in writing. He's paying me every penny he owes me, or they'll be facing legal action. Ken and I will be going for a much-deserved sushi, sake, and massage, paid for by me, as a much-deserved treated break from this chaos. Thank you, everyone. Sometimes the people-pleaser in me needs to remember that myself and my peace of mind is worth defending too. The whole situation with Alex and Anna is wild, but it's honestly so satisfying to see you take control like this. Also, love the touch of confronting them with receipts and a timeline. You really gave them no room to wiggle out of responsibility. The way you handled Anna, giving her the benefit of the doubt when she was kept in the dark, was really smart too. As for Alex's apology, yeah, not buying it. Have you ever had to set a firm boundary with someone close to you? And how did it feel to finally take control of the situation? Share your stories with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.